Empire that I laid out that ruled the world, like Winston Churchill said. He said the British Empire was built by the sword and it'll be maintained by the sword, and that's what it's been. I said it was just, the British Empire was New Roma. It was its policy, its procedures, its behavior. If you could just go up and watch what they're doing, forming large masses of armies and going and invading with their financial ability, and then invading wherever they want to take over, and then maintaining military posts in all of these places where they take over. And there's nothing, they don't have anything called democracy in those areas. I said that those are master and slave situations that are set up. And that's what I don't think, what I'm trying to educate people to, is the brutality of our Anglo-American heritage. It is not a history of equality. Our founding fathers were trying to create a country that where there was equality. In England, remember, it was from the time of Elizabeth, master and slave, the rich merchants and bankers, wealthy beyond belief. The poverty and the suffering of the masses was unbelievable. In some places, as in Ireland, they had what they called green mouth disease, because the people would be so poor that they would eat grass. It was that heavy-handed brutality. The workshops where children were often chained and worked long hours, just unbelievable exploitation and human suffering that comes out of this English system that we are all a part of. Of course, as prosperity grew and a middle class developed, that middle class moderated that behavior, and the middle class demanded moral behavior from government leaders. But that was not the history that we came out of. I said the brutality that was exhibited against people in this country who stood up against the British was outrageous. One of the reasons that Andrew Jackson hated the British so much, his brother died on a prison ship in Charleston Harbor, and his mother died while she was tending from the disease that she contracted while tending Andrew Jackson's brother on this prison ship. So that was our history one of heavy-handed abuse. Britain, one of the Carleton's raiders, early on during the Revolutionary War, there was a company of 400 colonists that were surrendered, and they were openly slaughtered. So they had a reputation for ruthlessness and brutality, and to exploit to the maximum whoever they could. That was the history of the British that that you don't get often in school. When you read these books, like if you read, this is Will and Ariel Durant's The Age of Reason, and they wrote the history of civilization, and they thank God for their work, because a bright light that they have shown on history. And their books were Our Oriental Heritage, The Life of Greece, Caesar and Christ, The Age of Faith, The Renaissance, The Reformation, The Age of Reason Begins, The Age of Louis XIV, The Age of Voltaire, Rousseau and Revolution, and The Age of Napoleon. And what those ages, what they teach that as a historian, is constant warfare. Constant warfare between these states, these artificial entities that are created, that expend these enormous sums of money, building up armaments, all of this to go and slaughter one another, to slaughter the young and the strongest in all the cultures. That's what was so shocking to me. Just the numbers that you see, probably a million young men a year for the last 500 years have been killed. 500 million men in these these constant warfares that are going on. And what are they doing? Well, they're enriching a few at the top, and they are enslaving and a wider base at the bottom. And that's the danger that we face today in our culture, is the reversing of this broadening of the middle class. When you have a broad middle class, then you have a moral government, because the middle class, if they're strong enough, they will force the rich to respect the middle class. If you do not have a middle class, the poor do not have the capability of forcing the rich to do anything, and so they become totally, completely used and victimized by them. And that's one of the things that has shocked me so much, that I'm, having been born here in Oregon, and in fact, my parents moved into this house in 1937, almost 74 years ago, and to see what I've seen that has developed while in my lifetime here. I realize now I felt I was born in the golden age. I was given everything as a young man. My brothers were too. We had parents. A father was a fire chief, mother a totally dedicated mother. And we thought that that was what the world was like everywhere. And what I've come to realize is that it is just an illusion. That when the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and when people stop holding their public officials accountable, this is what is the result. Is that you have public officials. I've heard Judge Donald Launder in his court, when I'm filling up the court with a crowd of people so I can speak like I'm speaking now, having him hit his chest like a gorilla, saying, "These are my courts." When I tried to speak, I said, "They are not your courts, they belong to the people." And when I said that, I was arrested, and then started to take me out. And then he said he was going to give me another chance. Heavy-handed kind of treatment for simply trying to speak in our courtrooms. And I want to say that there's been no one that has been more essential, critical, and indispensable in this fight that I've been involved in, and others in the Patriot community. And what we're intent on doing is we're intent on compelling all of these public employees that are on the public payroll, that we are demanding that they strictly comply with their oath of office, that they observe the rights of we the people, the citizens, whenever a citizen in this community appears in a court in this state. That's what these judges and all are paid to do. They're paid to see that your rights are observed, your rights to a fair hearing. That's what attorneys are licensed to do. They're licensed to see that your rights are observed, that you can help them. But what's happened in our system, that I've had judges and others tell me this. I had Arno Denicky, the former chief judge of the Oregon Supreme Court, up to my house almost 20 years ago when I got into this. He said he was too old to get involved. Harlow Lennon, a judge I revered, had him as an instructor. He told me he saw it coming into the courts in the early 70s. Tony Gasciato, a friend judge of mine, who married me once, said that he was, "Oh, you're going to fight him, huh, Roger? This ought to be interesting," they said. I said, "People, it is the moral absolute duty of every member of every generation, particularly those that have lived as well as I've lived and my family's lived and my children have lived. It's the moral absolute duty of every member of that generation, sacred duty, to pass on to their children and their posterity clean constitutional government and no debt." Now that's what our founding fathers, that's what they set up. Thomas Jefferson, the father of drafted the Declaration of Independence. The very first principle, he said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that we have a single class of citizens in this country. We do not have dukes and earls and counts and all that as they had in England and France and all these other places where they have the so-called royalty that would rule the world. And now the merchants and the bankers ruling the world, they have their own class." No, not in this country. In this country, we have a single class of citizen. and everyone that works for the government, the president, governors, judges, they are public employees. Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me, people. I'm a former prosecutor. 35 years ago, I was the government. Everyone that works for the government is a public employee. They get a public pension. Before assuming the duties of their public office, they must take an oath of office. And if they're a judge, they've got to sign and file that oath with the Secretary of State as a contract with we the people. Remember, people, we have a single class. We the people are the sovereigns. They that work for the government, from the president on down, are public employees. They work for the people. And if they won't do that, if they have a problem with that, of complying with their oath of office, then they should resign and find employment elsewhere. But as long as they're on the public payroll, they have a public responsibility to perform the duties of their office. And if they're not performing the duties of their office, then they need to be driven from office. A society of sheep begets a government of wolves, people. You cannot have clean government unless you have constant scrutiny. So what I've been doing for the last 23 years is trying to round up all of the sheepdogs out there, to drive these wolves from our midst, and to drive them out of positions of power, to drive them out of public office, so that we can have judges and public officials who respect the rights of the citizen, their employers, and protect those rights, and to use the full force of their office to go after those that are attacking innocent people and harming innocents. And where I've seen this in such abundance is with the state, particularly DHS, taking these children from parents on the slightest pretense. One, Carolyn Smith, her house, she said, beautiful grandmother, her house was too small and she was too old. She's in her mid-50s. She's a perfect grandmother. So this is what we are saying to all of you public employees that are seeing a copy of this, that we will not tolerate it. We will not tolerate it. You are public employees, you work for us, and as long as you're on the public payroll, you will comply with your oath of office. And if you won't, and if we find, we will confront you, we will expose you, and we will drive you from office, because we are determined to leave to our children and our posterity what was left to me by my parents. My father said, we all have a duty to leave it better for our children than it was given to us. And that's where I've seen there's been such a breakdown in our culture, in my generation. So few have that sense of duty and responsibility to their posterity, to ensure that their children and their posterity have the same advantages and live the same kind of tremendous life that all of us in this generation have been given an opportunity to live, with the high-tech ability to talk to anyone anywhere in the world anytime that you want to. All of this that we have, that we are so close to losing. This is what has been so shocking to me, is that how close we are to losing that, and to creating a state, a police state, where the prison industry is the fastest growing industry. This is outrageous. This is not a legacy that any generation can be proud of. So I'm hoping that you will join with me and join with the rest of us in this patriot community, and to drive those that will not comply with their oath of office from office, so that we can leave to our children and our posterity. We can leave it better for them than we were given. That we leave them a clean government with no debt, people. That's how you do it. And all of this corruption that's been going out there, it's been the crooks looting the innocent. Once you take back the courtroom, all of that, because it's all there is just a bunch of debit and credit entries. Once you take back the
30 seconds.
And you can reverse those credit debit entries, that's how we do it. But you have to come together, and you have to take on the fight of your neighbor against abusive authority, and you have to join together. That's the key. Where an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. Thank you.